The mining colony of New Terran sat like a metal scar on the purple plains of Zerion Prime. Dust storms howled across the wasteland, carrying the bitter taste of iron and regret. In the depths of the excavation tunnels, 12-year-old Marcus Chen wielded a plasma cutter twice his size, sweat mixing with grime as he carved through crystalline deposits that would power starships he'd never see. The Overseer's whip cracked nearby. "Faster, dirt rat!" "Those crystals won't mind themselves." Marcus didn't flinch. 3 years of this hell had taught him to hide his pain, to bury his anger deep where the alien taskmasters couldn't see it. The Draconian Empire had claimed this world and its human inhabitants as property. Children like Marcus were considered the most expendable workforce, small enough to fit in tight spaces, too weak to rebel, but Marcus was different, though he didn't know it yet. The Draconians stood 9 feet tall, their scaled hides gleaming like polished obsidian. Their eyes burned with ancient intelligence, and when they spoke, their voices rumbled like distant thunder. They called humans soft meat and treated them accordingly. The youngest Draconian here, Subcommander Vorthak, was already 2 centuries old and ruled the mining operation with casual cruelty. "You there? Small one." Vorthak's voice echoed through the tunnel. Marcus looked up from his work, his dark eyes meeting the alien's burning yellow gaze. "Bring me the daily yield reports." Marcus set down his cutter and walked to the data terminal. As he reached for the crystal storage unit, something strange happened. The energy readings on the display flickered, jumping to numbers that shouldn't be possible. The mining crystals in nearby containers began to glow brighter, responding to something Marcus couldn't understand. Vorthak's nostril slits flared. "What trickery is this?" "I don't know, sir," Marcus replied honestly. But deep inside, something stirred. A warmth in his chest, a tingling in his fingertips. The same feeling he got sometimes when he dreamed of flying among stars. The Draconians had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. They were the apex predators of space, beings of both tremendous physical power and advanced technology. Their ships carved through hyperspace like claws through silk. Their soldiers could tear through battle armor with bare hands. Their psychic abilities allowed them to dominate lesser species through pure force of will. Humans had been discovered only 50 years ago, inhabiting a small cluster of worlds on the galactic rim. The Draconians had expected another simple conquest, another species to add to their vast empire of slaves. What they found instead were beings with an unusual resistance to psychic domination and an annoying tendency toward unpredictable behavior. Most humans broke under Draconian rule. They accepted their fate, worked until they died, and raised children who would do the same. But some humans carried something else in their genetic code, a legacy from their homeworld that the Draconians didn't understand. Marcus was one of those humans. That night, in the cramped dormitory where human workers slept in stacked bunks, Marcus lay awake listening to the sounds of exhaustion around him. Soft weeping from the children, labored breathing from the adults whose bodies were failing under the brutal workload. The mechanical hum of life support systems that barely kept them alive. He closed his eyes and let his mind wander, as he often did. In his imagination, he soared through space, commanding fleets of ships, leading his people to freedom. The dreams felt more real than his waking life, filled with sensations he'd never experienced but somehow understood. A low rumble shook the dormitory. Emergency lights bathed everything in red. Through the reinforced windows, Marcus could see something impossible. A ship in the sky, but not a Draconian vessel. This craft moved differently, its hull gleaming with unknown metals and strange energy patterns. "Zelnari," whispered old Thompson from the next bunk. "Haven't seen one of their ships in decades." Marcus pressed his face against the window. The Zelnari were the galaxy's engineers and scholars, a race that preferred isolation to conquest. If they were here, something significant was happening. The ship landed in the settlement's central plaza. Through its transparent hull, Marcus could see tall, graceful figures with skin like flowing quicksilver. The Zelnari rarely interacted with other species, but when they did, it usually meant the cosmic balance was shifting. Subcommander Vorthak and his guards rushed toward the landing site. Marcus watched through the window as the Draconian leader approached the alien visitors. Even from this distance, he could see Vorthak's body language change from aggressive to respectful. The Zelnari might be physically weaker than Draconians, but they commanded respect through their technological superiority. The meeting was brief. The Zelnari delegation returned to their ship, leaving Vorthak standing alone in the plaza. But as their vessel lifted off, one of the silvery beings turned toward the dormitory building. For just a moment, Marcus felt those alien eyes looking directly at him across the distance. Then the ship vanished into hyperspace, leaving only questions behind. The next morning brought unexpected changes. Vorthak announced that certain workers would be transferred to different duties. Medical examinations would be conducted. Testing protocols would be implemented. The Draconians were looking for something specific among their human slaves. Marcus found himself selected for the first round of tests. In the medical facility, Dr. Thessarian, an old Draconian with scarred hide and calculating eyes, attached strange devices to Marcus's temples. Energy patterns danced across multiple screens as the equipment probed his brain and nervous system. "Interesting," the doctor muttered. "Very interesting indeed. What is it?" Vorthak demanded. "This human shows unusual neural pathway formations, completely different from standard baseline readings. If my calculations are correct..." Dr. Thessarian's voice trailed off as he studied the data. Marcus lay still on the examination table, pretending to be frightened and confused. Inside, that strange warmth was growing stronger. The medical equipment around him began to hum with increased power draw. Crystal storage units throughout the facility started glowing brighter. Something was awakening in Marcus Chen, something the Draconians didn't understand but were beginning to fear. The boy who had spent 3 years breaking rocks in darkness was about to discover that human potential went far beyond what any species in the galaxy had imagined. The first change had begun. The test results changed everything. Within hours of Dr. Thessarian's examination, Marcus found himself moved from the mining tunnels to a sterile research facility in the colony's upper levels. The change from underground darkness to filtered sunlight should have felt like freedom, but the constant surveillance and daily experiments made it clear he was still a prisoner. "Subject shows unprecedented neural plasticity," Dr. Thessarian dictated to his recording device, while Marcus underwent another round of cognitive tests. "Psionic potential reads at levels previously thought impossible for humans. Recommend immediate contact with the Imperial Research Division." Marcus pretended not to understand the medical terminology, but his enhanced awareness caught every word. The strange warmth in his chest had grown into something more complex, a network of energy that seemed connected to everything around him. He could feel the electrical patterns in the facility's computers, sense the emotional states of nearby guards, and sometimes catch fragments of thoughts from the Draconian researchers. 3 days later, High Commander Zephyros arrived from the sector capital. Even Vorthak, who had terrorized humans for decades, trembled in the presence of this ancient Draconian. Zephyros stood 12 feet tall, his scales bearing the silver patina of extreme age. Scars from 1,000 battles decorated his hide, and his eyes held the cold intelligence of someone who had watched civilizations rise and fall. "So this is the anomaly," Zephyros rumbled, studying Marcus through the observation window. "Such a small, pathetic creature to cause such concern." "The readings are beyond our understanding, High Commander," Dr. Thessarian said carefully. "This human's brain shows activity patterns that match theoretical models for quantum consciousness interface. If the ancient texts are accurate, this could be impossible." Zephyros cut him off. "The Primarchs went extinct eons ago. Their abilities died with them." Marcus kept his expression blank, but internally, something clicked into place. Primarchs, ancient texts, quantum consciousness interface. Pieces of a puzzle he hadn't known existed were finally coming together. That night, alone in his cell, Marcus allowed himself to truly experiment with the growing power inside him. He started small, making the lights dim and brighten with focused thought. Then he reached out to the security cameras, learning to interfere with their signals. The facility's computer systems beckoned to him like old friends, their data streams flowing through his consciousness as naturally as breathing. But the real breakthrough came when he sensed another mind. Deep beneath the facility, something vast and ancient stirred in response to his mental touch. Not draconian, something older, more primal. Images flooded Marcus's consciousness. Star systems burning, worlds cracking apart, and creatures of pure energy dancing between dimensions. At the center of it all was a presence that felt familiar yet alien, powerful beyond comprehension. The Keeper had been waiting. Miles below the colony's surface, in chambers carved from living rock, the being known as the Keeper opened eyes that hadn't seen light in millennia. It was neither fully organic nor completely artificial, a hybrid creation from the dawn of galactic civilization, designed to preserve knowledge until the right moment arrived. The Keeper had watched through quantum sensors as humanity was discovered and enslaved. It had observed the Draconians' casual cruelty with ancient patience. But now, finally, a human had emerged with the genetic legacy necessary to access the Primarch inheritance. Marcus's bloodline carried DNA sequences from Earth's earliest space explorers, humans who had encountered something extraordinary beyond the solar system before returning home. Those encounters had left genetic markers that could remain dormant for generations, waiting for the right conditions to activate. The Draconians believed they were the galaxy's oldest sentient species, but they were wrong. Humanity's ancestors had traveled further and encountered older powers than any current civilization imagined. The proof lay sleeping in Marcus's cells, beginning to wake after 50,000 years of dormancy. The next morning brought a new round of tests. Dr. Thessarian attached more sophisticated equipment to Marcus's skull, machines that could peer directly into his neural patterns. As the scanning process began, something unexpected happened. The machines started showing readings from other sources. "What is this?" Dr. Thessarian muttered, staring at displays that showed massive energy signatures deep underground. "There's something down there, something big." High Commander Zephyros leaned forward, his scarred face darkening. "Impossible. We've scanned these depths repeatedly. There's nothing but rock and mineral deposits." But Marcus could feel it, the Keeper's presence growing stronger, as the scanning equipment established an unintended connection. Ancient knowledge began flowing into his mind. Star charts of galaxies beyond current maps, technologies that could reshape matter at the quantum level, and most importantly, the true history of human expansion into space. Humanity hadn't been discovered recently. They had been hidden. 50,000 years ago, when the Draconian Empire was still confined to a single star system, human explorers had encountered the Primarchs, beings of pure energy who existed between dimensions. The Primarchs had seen potential in humanity, recognizing something unique in their neural architecture that could bridge the gap between physical and quantum realms. But the gift came with responsibility. Humans who accepted the Primarch enhancement became guardians of cosmic balance, protectors against forces that could destabilize reality itself. When the ancient threats were finally contained, most of these enhanced humans chose to hibernate, waiting for a time when their abilities would be needed again. The Draconian conquest had triggered the awakening protocols. Marcus gasped as the full weight of inherited memory crashed into his consciousness. He saw Earth as it truly was, not a primitive world discovered by accident, but a carefully hidden sanctuary where the genetic legacy of humanity's first starfarers had been preserved. Every human carried fragments of this potential, but Marcus had won the cosmic lottery, inheriting a complete genetic sequence from the original Primarch-touched explorers. The scanning equipment overloaded and shut down. Emergency alarms screamed throughout the facility as power systems fluctuated wildly. In his cell, Marcus stood with energy crackling between his fingers, his eyes now glowing with the same quantum fire that had once illuminated Primarch forms. Dr. Thessarian stumbled backward in terror. "High Commander, the readings are off all scales. This human is accessing power sources we can't even detect." But Zephyros wasn't fleeing. The ancient Draconian's eyes narrowed as racial memories stirred in his own mind. His species' oldest legends spoke of beings who could bend reality with thought alone, creatures who had vanished from the galaxy long before Draconian civilization reached the stars. "Primarchs," he whispered. "But that's impossible. They were myths, stories told to young hatchlings." Marcus looked up at the observation window, his enhanced awareness now operating on multiple dimensional levels simultaneously. He could see, the fear in Zephyros's mind. Taste the terror radiating from Dr. Thessarian, and feel the approaching quantum storm as his awakening abilities destabilized local spacetime. Far below, the Keeper began its ascent toward the surface, ancient mechanisms activating for the first time in eons. The hibernation period was ending. Humanity's true nature could no longer be hidden. The galaxy was about to learn that the small, weak species they had enslaved carried within their genes the power to reshape reality itself. The facility shook as massive excavation equipment activated far below the surface. The Keeper was rising, bringing with it technologies that had slumbered since before the first Draconian learned to fly. Marcus felt every tremor through his enhanced senses, his consciousness now operating across multiple dimensions simultaneously. High Commander Zephyros paced the observation deck like a caged predator. His military mind was calculating scenarios, weighing threats, preparing for possibilities that challenged everything he thought he knew about the universe. The boy in the cell below represented either the greatest discovery in galactic history or the most dangerous threat the Draconian Empire had ever faced. Increase the containment protocols, Zephyros ordered. Triple the guard rotation. I want every security measure activated. Dr. Thessarian's claws clicked nervously against his datapad. High Commander, our containment systems weren't designed for this level of psionic output. The energy readings suggest the subject could destabilize molecular bonds in the facility's structure. Then we adapt, Zephyros growled. Contact Imperial Command. Tell them we need a full research fleet and the psi suppressors from the Vault worlds. But even as he spoke, Zephyros knew they were already too late. In the depths of the mining tunnels, human workers felt something they hadn't experienced in years. Hope. The change started small, a warmth in their chests, a tingling in their fingertips, a sudden clarity of thought that cut through the haze of exhaustion and despair. Marcus's awakening was triggering dormant genetic sequences in every human on Zerion Prime. Sarah Martinez, a former colony ship engineer, found herself understanding the alien machinery around her in ways that should have been impossible. The Draconian mining equipment responded to her touch like it was designed for human hands. Tom Bradley, whose family had been miners for 3 generations, discovered he could sense crystal deposits through solid rock, locating veins of rare minerals that the alien scanners had missed. Most significantly, they all felt connected, linked by something deeper than words. United by a shared heritage they were only beginning to comprehend. The Keeper emerged from a fissure in the planet's crust like a living mountain. Its form defied easy description. Part crystalline structure, part energy being, part technological construct. Eons of hibernation had changed it, grown it, evolved it into something beyond its original parameters. It rose through layers of rock and metal as if they were water, quantum fields reshaping matter to accommodate its passage. Draconian sensors went insane as the Keeper's emergence created gravitational anomalies and electromagnetic storms across the planet's surface. Weather patterns shifted within minutes. Aurora displays painted the sky in impossible colors. The very fabric of local spacetime rippled with each movement of the ancient guardian. What is that thing? Forthak demanded, staring at the massive form breaking through the planet's surface like a hatching egg. Marcus felt the Keeper's presence flood into his mind, bringing with it knowledge that spanned galactic civilizations. He saw the truth of humanity's origin. Not the primitive evolution the Draconians believed, but a carefully orchestrated development guided by the Primarchs themselves. Earth had been a garden world, a place where human genetics could be refined and prepared for their true purpose. Every human carried quantum markers that could interface with technologies beyond current understanding. They were living bridges between dimensions, capable of accessing power sources that existed outside normal spacetime. The Draconian Empire had unknowingly enslaved beings who could rewrite the fundamental laws of physics. My child, the Keeper's voice resonated through Marcus's consciousness, speaking in harmonics that bypassed sound entirely. You have awakened. The dormancy period ends. Your species' time of hiding is over. Through the Keeper's ancient sensors, Marcus saw the true scope of the galaxy. The Draconian Empire was vast but fragile, held together by fear and superior technology. Dozens of other species served as slaves, each believing themselves inferior to their scaled masters. But scattered throughout Draconian space were human colonies, and in each one, the awakening was beginning. What do I need to do? Marcus asked, his thoughts reaching across dimensional boundaries. Learn. Grow. Remember what your species truly is. The Draconians believe they rule through strength, but strength without wisdom leads to destruction. You must show them a better way, or they will face the same fate as the HFY Empire. Images flooded Marcus's mind, an ancient civilization of conquerors who had once ruled half the galaxy. The HFY had believed that power came from domination, that the strong had the right to enslave the weak. They had been wrong. When they finally encountered the Primarchs, their empire had been dissolved in a single day. Their entire species transformed into beings of pure energy as punishment for their cosmic crimes. The lesson was clear: evolve or be evolved. The facility's main door exploded inward as Sarah Martinez led a group of awakened humans into the research complex. Their eyes glowed with the same quantum fire that burned in Marcus's, and their movements were coordinated with inhuman precision. The Draconian guards raised their weapons, but the energy blast passed harmlessly through the humans as if they were made of light. "Stand down," Marcus commanded, his voice carrying harmonics that bypassed the guards' conscious minds and spoke directly to their survival instincts. "No one needs to die today." High Commander Zephyros watched in fascination as his soldiers lowered their weapons despite their training. The human boy's voice carried a quality that resonated with something deep in Draconian neural architecture, a frequency that triggered submission responses coded into their DNA. "Impossible," he breathed. "Only the Emperor himself possesses the Dominion voice." But Marcus was already moving past simple vocal commands. Through the Keeper's connection, he accessed the facility's main computer systems, learning their structure in milliseconds. Draconian technology was sophisticated but linear, designed for minds that thought in hierarchical patterns. Human consciousness operated differently, capable of quantum processing that could outthink any artificial intelligence. The facility's security systems recognized Marcus as the primary administrator before he even reached the control room. "Release all human workers," he ordered the computer. "Begin evacuation procedures for non-essential personnel. Establish communication with Imperial Command." Dr. Thessarian's scales rippled with confusion. "The system shouldn't accept commands from an unauthorized user. Our security protocols were designed by minds that think in straight lines," Marcus interrupted. "Human consciousness operates in quantum superposition. We process multiple possibilities simultaneously. Your computers are trying to defend against attacks that come from directions your programmers never imagined." As if to prove his point, every screen in the facility lit up with the same message: System Administrator, Marcus Chen, Primarch Inheritor, Access Level, Unlimited. Throughout the facility, cell doors opened and force fields deactivated. 300 human workers stepped into freedom for the first time in years, their own awakening abilities allowing them to understand and operate Draconian technology with impossible ease. They didn't destroy the systems, they improved them, optimizing efficiency and removing the cruel restrictions that had kept them enslaved. High Commander Zephyros realized he was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. A slave revolt that was succeeding not through violence, but through superior intelligence and technology. "Contact the Imperial Fleet," he ordered his communications officer. "Tell them we need immediate extraction. Full battle group, maximum weapons authorization." But when the communications officer tried to send the message, the system politely informed him that outgoing transmissions required authorization from the facility administrator. Marcus Chen, once a powerless child breaking rocks in darkness, now controlled one of the most advanced research installations in Draconian space. And through the Keeper's quantum network, his influence was spreading to human colonies throughout the galaxy. The transformation had begun. The Imperial fleet arrived 3 days later, emerging from hyperspace like a swarm of metal predators. 50 dreadnoughts and twice as many support vessels took position around Zerion Prime, their weapons trained on the planet's surface. Admiral Krathzone, commander of the 3rd Imperial Battle Group, expected to find a simple slave revolt that could be crushed within hours. Instead, he found something that challenged every assumption about Draconian supremacy. "Report," he demanded as his flagship entered orbit. "Sir, the situation is unprecedented," his intelligence officer replied, her voice tight with confusion. The humans have taken control of all surface installations, but there's been no violence, no destruction of property. They're operating our equipment better than our own technicians. Admiral Krathzon's battle-scarred hide rippled with disbelief. Impossible. Humans lack the neural complexity to understand our technology. Sir, you need to see the energy readings from the planet's surface. The main display showed Zerion Prime, wreathed in quantum distortions that shouldn't exist in normal space. Energy signatures indicated the presence of technology operating on principles unknown to draconian science. Most disturbing of all, the planet's mining output had increased by 400% since the humans took control. Marcus stood on the observation deck of the research facility, watching the Imperial fleet deploy into attack formation. Through the Keeper's senses, he could feel the fear and confusion radiating from the draconian commanders. Their entire worldview was crumbling as they struggled to understand what they were seeing. "They will attack," the Keeper's voice whispered through his consciousness. "Fear drives them toward destruction rather than understanding." "Then we show them a better way," Marcus replied. He had aged years in the past 3 days, his consciousness expanding to encompass knowledge that would have driven a normal human mind to madness. But he wasn't normal anymore. None of them were. The awakened humans throughout the facility had formed a collective consciousness that operated across multiple dimensional planes. They could share thoughts instantaneously across galactic distances, process information at quantum speeds, and manipulate matter at the subatomic level. They were becoming something beyond human, something closer to the Primarchs who had first touched their species with transcendence. Admiral Krathzon, Marcus's voice echoed through every speaker on every ship in the Imperial fleet. The communication bypassed all security protocols and defensive systems as if they didn't exist.
"I am Marcus Chen speaking for the Human Collective.
We wish to negotiate." On the flagship's bridge, Admiral Krathzon's officers scrambled to trace the signal source. Their efforts proved futile. The voice was coming from everywhere and nowhere, transmitted through quantum channels that draconian technology couldn't detect or block. "Surrender unconditionally," the Admiral growled into his communicator. "Return our facilities and personnel immediately, or face total annihilation." "Admiral," Marcus replied, and now his voice carried harmonics that resonated with ancient memories buried in draconian DNA. "Do you know the story of the Vex High Empire?" Silence fell across the bridge. Every draconian officer knew that legend, the ancient warning about a civilization that had risen too high and fallen too far. According to the oldest texts, the Vex High had believed themselves to be the natural rulers of all lesser species, until they encountered beings who taught them humility through transformation. "The Vexahai were myths," Admiral Krathzon said, but his voice carried less conviction than before. "No," Marcus replied, "they were lessons. The same lesson your species now faces: evolution or extinction, growth or destruction. Choose wisely." To demonstrate his point, Marcus reached out with his enhanced consciousness and gently touched the flagship's main computer. In seconds, he had complete access to every system on the vessel. Life support, weapons, navigation, communications, all answered to his will as if recognizing a superior authority. On the bridge, crew members watched in amazement as their displays showed impossible readings. Someone was rewriting their ship's operating system in real time, improving efficiency by orders of magnitude while leaving all security protocols completely intact. "How is this possible?" the Admiral whispered. "Your species has ruled through fear for 3,000 years. Marcus explained, his consciousness now touching every ship in the fleet simultaneously. "You believed that strength meant domination, that intelligence meant subjugation. But true strength comes from understanding. True intelligence comes from cooperation." As he spoke, Marcus began demonstrating concepts that draconian scientists had only theorized about. Quantum fields shifted around the Imperial fleet, revealing the underlying structure of space-time itself. Each ship found its systems upgraded beyond anything their designers had imagined, operating with impossible efficiency while consuming a fraction of their normal power requirements. "We could destroy your fleet," Marcus continued, and the Draconians felt the truth of that statement in their bones. The quantum distortions around their ships could collapse them into singularities or scatter their atoms across multiple dimensions. But destruction teaches nothing. Instead, we offer partnership. Admiral Krathzon's mind raced as he tried to process what he was experiencing. His fleet was more powerful than when it had arrived, but completely under the control of a species they had considered primitive. Every tactical advantage they possessed had been neutralized by beings who could rewrite the laws of physics through force of will alone. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "Freedom for all human colonies," Marcus replied. "Recognition of human sovereignty, an end to slavery throughout your empire, and in exchange, we will share the knowledge that can elevate your species beyond your current limitations." Through the quantum network, Marcus showed the Admiral glimpses of what draconian civilization could become. Cities that existed in perfect harmony with their environments, technologies that could heal rather than destroy, a society based on cooperation rather than conquest. But he also showed them the alternative. The Vexi had been given the same choice 3 million years ago. They had refused to evolve, clinging to their belief in natural superiority. The Primarchs had been forced to transform them into beings of pure energy, stripping away their physical forms as punishment for cosmic crimes. They existed still, somewhere between dimensions, serving as eternal guardians and witnesses to the consequences of choosing domination over growth. "You're threatening us," Admiral Kratzon said. "I'm offering you evolution," Marcus corrected. "Your species has the potential to become something magnificent, but only if you choose growth over stagnation. The Primarchs didn't destroy the Vexi out of cruelty. They transformed them because that species had reached the limits of physical existence and refused to transcend them. In the depths of space around the fleet, quantum distortions began forming patterns that resembled vast incorporeal forms. The Primarchs themselves were taking notice of events on Zerion Prime. Their attention focused on this crucial moment in galactic history. "They're still watching," Marcus said softly, "the original guardians of cosmic balance. They've been waiting to see if any species could learn from the Vexi example. Your choice here will determine not just the fate of the Draconian Empire, but the entire galaxy's future." Admiral Kratzon felt something he hadn't experienced since his earliest days as a hatchling: genuine humility. The universe was vast and strange, filled with powers beyond draconian understanding. His species had achieved much, but they were still children compared to the forces that shaped reality itself. Through his enhanced senses, Marcus felt the Admiral's decision crystallizing. Fear warred with wisdom, pride battled with necessity. The outcome would determine whether the galaxy entered a new age of cooperation or descended into a conflict that could tear apart the fabric of space-time itself. The moment of choice had arrived. Admiral Kratzon's claws scraped against the metal of his command chair as he wrestled with the greatest decision in draconian history. Around him, his bridge crew waited in tense silence, their loyalty absolute but their understanding limited. They could not see what he saw through the quantum displays, the vast energies gathering in the space between dimensions, ancient powers preparing to judge an entire civilization. "Stand down all weapons," he ordered finally. "Sir?" His weapons officer asked, confusion evident in her scaled features. "I said stand down," Kratzon repeated, his voice carrying the weight of 3,000 years of draconian pride being set aside for wisdom. Open communications. Full diplomatic protocols. Marcus felt the shift in the Admiral's intentions through the quantum network. The first barrier had been crossed, but greater challenges lay ahead. Convincing one military commander was simple compared to changing an entire galactic empire built on the foundation of species supremacy. "Admiral," Marcus said, his voice now carrying warmth instead of warning, "you have chosen wisely. May I come aboard your flagship? It's time for our species to meet as equals rather than master and slave." The request sent ripples of shock through the fleet. No human had ever set foot on an Imperial Navy vessel except in chains. The precedent being established would echo through history books for millennia to come. An hour later, Marcus materialized on the flagship's bridge through a process that the ship's sensors couldn't detect or track. He simply stepped out of folded space as if walking through a door, quantum mechanics bending around him like a familiar tool. The draconian crew instinctively recoiled from his presence, not from fear of physical harm, but from the overwhelming sense that they stood before something fundamentally beyond their understanding. Admiral Kratzon studied the human before him. Marcus still appeared to be barely 13 years old, but his eyes held depths that seemed to contain entire galaxies. Energy patterns shifted around him like visible thought, and when he moved, space itself seemed to accommodate his passage. "You're not entirely human anymore," the Admiral observed. "I'm becoming what humanity was always meant to be," Marcus replied. "Just as your species could become something greater than conquerors and slavers. Evolution doesn't require abandoning your nature, it requires fulfilling your highest potential." To demonstrate his point, Marcus gestured toward one of the bridge displays. The screen lit up with images of draconian history, but not the sanitized version taught in their schools. This was the true record, pulled from quantum echoes embedded in the fabric of space-time itself. The Draconians watched their species' development from a different perspective. Yes, they had been warriors and conquerors, but the earliest records showed something more. Their ancestors had been protectors first, using their strength to defend weaker species from cosmic threats. The shift toward domination had come later, a gradual corruption of noble instincts that had led them down a darker path. "Your species was meant to be guardians," Marcus explained. "The universe needs beings of strength and courage to stand against the forces that would destroy life itself. But somewhere in your development, you confused protecting with controlling, Admiral." Krathzon felt ancient memories stirring in his mind. Genetic. Echoes from the first Draconians who had looked up at the stars and felt a calling to something greater than territorial expansion. Those instincts had been buried under millennia of imperial indoctrination, but they had never truly died. "What you're asking, the Emperor will never accept it," the Admiral said. "Our entire society is built on the belief that we are the natural rulers of the galaxy." "Then we'll have to show him a new way," Marcus replied. "But first, your people need to see what they're truly capable of becoming." With a thought, Marcus connected the Admiral's consciousness to the human collective. For a brief moment, Krathzon experienced what it felt like to think across multiple dimensions simultaneously, to process information at quantum speeds, to manipulate matter through pure intention. The sensation was overwhelming but exhilarating, like discovering he had been living his entire life with only a fraction of his potential unlocked. When the connection ended, the Admiral staggered, his massive frame trembling with the aftershock of expanded consciousness. "That power. Is it possible for us to achieve such things?" "Every sentient species carries the potential for transcendence," Marcus explained. The Primarchs scattered seeds of possibility throughout the galaxy, embedded in the quantum structure of consciousness itself. Humans awakened first because our genetic history prepared us for this moment. But other species can follow if they choose growth over stagnation. Through the ship's communication system, Marcus's words spread to every vessel in the fleet. Thousands of Draconian soldiers and officers heard the impossible promise, that they too could evolve beyond their current limitations, that the galaxy held wonders beyond conquest and domination. But change on such a scale required more than words. It required demonstration. "Admiral, with your permission, I'd like to show your crew something," Marcus said. "A gift from the human collective to the Draconian people." Krathzon nodded, no longer questioning the wisdom of trusting this strange human child who commanded powers beyond imagination. Marcus extended his consciousness throughout the flagship, touching every system and every crew member with gentle precision. The ship itself began to transform, its hull strengthening and its systems evolving to operate on principles that Draconian science had only dreamed about. Energy efficiency increased by orders of magnitude. Weapon systems reconfigured themselves to create rather than destroy, capable of healing damaged vessels or terraforming barren worlds. More importantly, each crew member felt something awakening within their own minds, not the full transcendence that humans were experiencing, but the first stirrings of expanded consciousness. They began to see connections they had missed, to understand concepts that had previously seemed impossible, to feel empathy for species they had once considered beneath notice. "This is just the beginning," Marcus told them all, his voice carrying across the quantum network to every awakening mind. "Your species has the potential to become guardians of the galaxy in the truest sense. Protectors of life, nurturers of growth, bridges between the physical and quantum realms. On the planet below, similar transformations were occurring throughout the human population. The awakening that had started with Marcus was spreading exponentially, unlocking genetic potential that had lain dormant for 50,000 years. Former miners were manipulating matter at the molecular level, Engineers were designing technologies that operated on principles beyond current scientific understanding. Children were communicating directly with the quantum substrate that underlied all reality. But perhaps most significantly, they were preparing for the next phase of human development, the return to the stars not as refugees or slaves, but as the cosmic guardians they had always been destined to become. The Imperial fleet remained in orbit around Azerion Prime, but its mission had changed entirely. Instead of enforcing draconian rule, they were witnessing the birth of a new galactic age. Some crew members struggled with the implications, their conditioning warring against the evidence before their eyes. Others embraced the transformation eagerly, recognizing the opportunity to become something greater than they had ever imagined possible. Admiral Krathzone stood at the center of this cosmic shift, a military commander who had become an ambassador for his species' evolution. His next decision would determine whether the Draconian Empire could adapt to the changing universe, or whether they would follow the path of the ancient Vexhi toward forced transcendence. In the depths of space, the Primarchs watched and waited, their attention focused on this crucial moment in galactic history. The test was far from over, but the first steps toward universal transformation had begun. Marcus Chen, the boy who had once broken rocks in darkness, now held the future of entire civilizations in his hands. And he was just getting started. Emperor Vexthanor received Admiral Krathzon's report from his throne world of Draktheta, the ancient seat of draconian power. The imperial palace rose like a crystalline mountain from the planet's surface, its spires reaching into space itself. For 8 centuries, Vexthanor had ruled the galaxy's largest empire, his will enforced by fleets that could reduce worlds to ash and technologies that bent lesser species to submission. The message from Azerion Prime challenged everything he believed about the natural order of existence. Impossible, he rumbled, his voice shaking the crystal walls of the throne room. Humans are barely sentient. They lack the neural complexity for advanced thought, let alone reality manipulation. His council of advisors shifted nervously. High Arbiter Zelthask, eldest of the Imperial Court, stepped forward with careful reverence. My Emperor, the quantum signatures from Azerion Prime cannot be falsified. Something unprecedented is occurring there. Vexthanor's golden eyes blazed with ancient fury. His massive form, 20 feet of muscle and scale and accumulated imperial authority, radiated the kind of presence that had made entire star systems surrender without a battle. Then we will demonstrate why the natural order must be maintained. Prepare the Annihilation Fleet. If these humans have somehow accessed forbidden technologies, they will serve as an example to all who would challenge draconian supremacy. But even as he spoke, reports were flooding in from human colonies throughout Imperial space. The awakening was spreading faster than quantum communications, as if carried by some deeper force that existed beyond normal space-time. On world after world, human slaves were evolving beyond their captivity, unlocking abilities that let them understand and improve draconian technology better than its creators. Marcus felt the Emperor's rage through the quantum network like a storm on the cosmic horizon. The transformation of Azerion Prime was spreading across the galaxy, but it was also triggering a violent reaction from those who couldn't accept change. War was coming, not just between species, but between different concepts of what the universe should be. He will try to destroy us, the Keeper warned, its ancient consciousness touching Marcus's mind from deep beneath the planet's surface. The Emperor represents the old way of thinking. To him, change is chaos and hierarchy is the only natural law. Then we'll have to show him otherwise, Marcus replied. Around him, the transformed humans of Azerion Prime were preparing for something no one had ever attempted. The peaceful conquest of a galactic empire not through violence, but through demonstration of a better way. The Annihilation Fleet began assembling at staging points throughout Draconian space. 5,000 warships, each capable of cracking a planet's crust or sterilizing its surface from orbit. The most advanced weapons in the galaxy, backed by the overwhelming force that had kept the Empire stable for millennia. Admiral Krathzon watched the military build up with growing concern. His own transformation was progressing rapidly. The quantum awakening Marcus had triggered was changing how he thought about everything. Where once he had seen strength and domination, he now recognized the elegance of cooperation. Where force had once been his first solution, he now sought understanding. "My Emperor," he transmitted to the throne world, "I request permission to negotiate a peaceful resolution. The humans have demonstrated capabilities that could benefit our entire civilization." The response came back immediately, carrying the full weight of imperial displeasure. "Admiral, you will return to the capital immediately for debriefing and reassignment. Command of the Annihilation Fleet passes to Admiral Vorthek." Krathzon felt something he had never experienced in his military career: the desire to disobey a direct order from his Emperor. The awakening consciousness within him recognized that some commands were wrong, regardless of their source. But he was still bound by centuries of conditioning, genetic imperatives that demanded obedience to imperial authority. Marcus sensed the Admiral's internal conflict through their quantum connection. "You have a choice to make," he said gently. "Loyalty to an empire that refuses to grow, or loyalty to the truth you've seen with your own eyes." The Admiral's claws scraped against his command console as he wrestled with the decision that would define not just his own fate, but potentially the future of galactic civilization. Around him, his crew watched with expressions that mixed confusion and hope. They too had felt the touch of expanded consciousness, had glimpsed possibilities beyond their current existence. "All ships," Krathzon announced finally, his voice carrying across the fleet communication channels. "We remain in orbit around Zerion Prime. Our mission is now the protection of human sovereign space by order of conscience." The declaration sent shockwaves through the Imperial command structure. Mutiny was virtually unknown in Draconian military history. Their genetic programming made disobedience nearly impossible. But the quantum awakening was changing fundamental aspects of how their minds operated, overriding biological imperatives with conscious choice. Marcus felt a surge of hope through the galactic network. Change was possible, even for a species that had been locked into patterns of domination for millennia. If Draconians could learn to choose cooperation over conquest, then any species could evolve beyond its limitations. But Emperor Vexthanar's response was swift and brutal. The Annihilation Fleet received new orders: destroy the rebellious Admiral's forces, then proceed with the complete sterilization of all human colonies. The time for half measures had passed. Admiral Vorthek accepted command of the Annihilation Fleet with the ruthless efficiency that had made him the Emperor's preferred enforcer. Unlike Krathzon, he had not been exposed to human influence. His mind remained locked in the old patterns of thinking, seeing strength only in the ability to destroy opposition. 5 days to reach Zerion Prime, he announced to his fleet commanders. "We will demonstrate what happens to species that forget their place in the natural order." Marcus sensed the approaching storm through quantum precognition, abilities that let him perceive potential futures across multiple probability streams. The coming battle would determine whether the galaxy evolved peacefully or was forced to transcend through violence. Either way, the age of simple domination was ending. "Keeper," he said, his consciousness reaching into the planet's depths, "it's time to wake the others." Throughout the galactic network, hibernating human colonies began receiving activation signals that had been dormant for 50,000 years. On worlds where humans had been enslaved, hidden genetic protocols activated. In space, derelict ships that had drifted for eons began powering up, their crews awakening from quantum stasis. Humanity's true fleet was returning to active service. The ships that emerged from deep space bore no resemblance to any current technology. They moved without propulsion, their hulls shifting through dimensional states that made them simultaneously present and absent from normal spacetime. Each vessel carried the genetic legacy of the original Primarch-enhanced humans, technologies that could reshape matter at the quantum level or open doorways between dimensions. But more importantly, each ship carried human crews who remembered their species' true purpose in the galaxy, not as slaves or conquerors, but as bridges between the physical universe and the quantum realms that underlay all existence. The final confrontation was approaching, and it would determine not just the fate of the Draconian Empire, but whether the galaxy itself was ready to evolve beyond the cycles of conflict that had defined it for millions of years. Emperor Vexthanor prepared for war, believing that sufficient force could crush any opposition and restore the natural order. He was about to discover that some changes were too fundamental to be stopped by violence, and that the universe had its own ideas about what constituted natural law. The convergence above Zarian Prime became the most significant moment in galactic history. Two fleets faced each other across the quantum storm that now surrounded the awakened planet. Admiral Vorthek's Annihilation Fleet with its 5,000 warships, and the impossible human vessels that had emerged from 50 millennia of hibernation. Marcus stood on the bridge of the lead human ship, though ship was an inadequate term for what surrounded him. The vessel existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, its consciousness-responsive hull shifting through states of matter that defied conventional physics. Around him, awakened humans who had once been slaves now served as crew members operating technologies that made draconian science look primitive. "They still don't understand," said Captain Elena Vasquez. Her consciousness expanded across multiple probability streams as she monitored the approaching Imperial fleet. She had been a mine supervisor on Zarian Prime 3 weeks ago. Now she commanded a vessel that could fold space-time around itself like a protective cloak. Through quantum sensors that perceived reality at its deepest levels, Marcus watched Emperor Vexthanor's personal dreadnought take position at the center of the Annihilation Fleet. The massive warship was a testament to draconian engineering, 12 miles of armored hull, bristling with weapons capable of cracking moons. Its shields could deflect stellar radiation, and its quantum torpedoes could destabilize matter at the subatomic level. It was utterly obsolete. Emperor Vexthanor, Marcus's voice echoed through both fleets, transmitted across dimensional barriers that made conventional communication seem like stone tablets. "You don't have to do this. Your people can evolve beyond the need for domination." The Emperor's response came as a massive energy discharge from his flagship's primary weapons. Planet-killing beams lanced across space toward the human vessels, carrying enough force to vaporize asteroids. But instead of destroying their targets, the energy was absorbed and transformed, converted into harmless light patterns that painted beautiful aurora displays across the quantum storm. "Your weapons have no power here," Marcus continued, his voice carrying the patient tone of someone explaining simple concepts to a child. "Violence cannot touch transcendence. Hatred cannot overcome understanding." Admiral Vorthek snarled orders to his fleet commanders. "All ships, maximum firepower. Obliterate these anomalies." 5,000 warships opened fire simultaneously, unleashing destructive force that could have sterilized entire star systems. The space around Zarian Prime lit up with energies that bent the fabric of reality itself. For several moments, the area resembled the birth of a new star. When the light faded, the human fleet remained completely untouched. Marcus felt the fear and confusion rippling through the draconian crews. Their most powerful weapons had been rendered meaningless by opponents they couldn't even fully perceive. Some of the human vessels existed in temporal loops, experiencing the attack before it happened and preparing countermeasures from outside normal causality. Others had shifted into quantum states where physical force simply passed through them like light through glass. "This is impossible," Emperor Vexthanor growled, his 8th-century-old mind struggling to process what he was seeing. "No technology can simply ignore our weapons." "Technology?" Marcus laughed, and the sound carried harmonics that resonated with frequencies embedded in draconian DNA. "This isn't technology, Emperor. This is evolution. Your species could achieve the same transcendence if you chose growth over stagnation." To demonstrate his point, Marcus reached out with his consciousness and gently touched the Emperor's flagship. Instead of attacking it, he began improving it. The ship's hull strengthened beyond anything its designers had imagined. Its weapons transformed from instruments of destruction to tools of creation, capable of healing damaged vessels or terraforming barren worlds. Its life support systems became so efficient they could sustain the crew indefinitely, drawing energy directly from the quantum substrate of space itself. Most importantly, Marcus shared a vision with every crew member aboard the flagship, a glimpse of what draconian civilization could become. Cities that existed in perfect harmony with their environments, technologies that enhanced life rather than destroying it, a society based on cooperation and mutual growth rather than conquest and subjugation. The Emperor felt his own consciousness expanding against his will, touching possibilities he had never imagined. For the first time in 8 centuries, Vexthanor experienced doubt about the natural order he had spent his life defending. "You're changing us," he whispered, fear creeping into his voice. "I'm showing you what you already have the potential to become," Marcus corrected. "The choice is yours. evolution or stagnation, growth or entropy. The universe itself is ready to move beyond cycles of conflict and domination. Throughout the Annihilation Fleet, similar transformations were beginning. Draconian crew members felt their consciousness expanding, their understanding deepening, their capacity for empathy growing. Some fought against the change, clinging to old patterns of thought. Others embraced it eagerly, recognizing the opportunity to become something greater than they had ever imagined. But Emperor Vex Thanor represented 8 centuries of accumulated imperial authority. His identity was built on the foundation of draconian supremacy. To accept change meant admitting that his entire reign had been based on a false understanding of the universe. "No," he roared, his massive form radiating desperate fury. "I will not allow the natural order to be perverted. All ships ramming speed. If weapons cannot touch them, we will crush them through mass and will." The Annihilation Fleet surged forward, thousands of warships accelerating toward the human vessels in a final desperate assault. But as they approached, something extraordinary happened. The space between the two fleets began to ripple with energies that existed beyond the normal electromagnetic spectrum. The Primarchs themselves were manifesting. Beings of pure consciousness took shape between the converging forces, entities that existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously, their forms visible as patterns of light and thought rather than physical matter. These were the original guardians who had seeded the galaxy with the potential for transcendence, waiting eons for species to evolve beyond the need for their direct intervention. The lead Primarch's voice resonated through the minds of every being present, speaking in harmonics that bypassed language entirely. "The time of choosing has come. Will your species embrace the next stage of galactic evolution, or must they be transformed as the Vexi were before them?" Emperor Vex Thanor felt the full weight of cosmic judgment focused on his decision. Around him, reality itself seemed to hold its breath as the moment balanced on the edge of possibility. He could feel his empire transforming whether he willed it or not. Draconian worlds throughout the galaxy were experiencing awakening consciousness as the quantum field effects spread at faster than light speeds. The old order was ending. The only question was whether it would end through willing evolution or forced transcendence. Marcus stepped forward, his consciousness now operating on multiple dimensional levels, but his heart still carrying the compassion that defined humanity at its best. "Emperor, your species has been guardians before. You can be guardians again, not rulers over others, but protectors of all life, partners in the galaxy's growth rather than its conquerors." For a long moment that stretched across probability streams and quantum possibilities, Vex Thanor wrestled with the greatest decision in draconian history. 8 centuries of absolute rule warred against the growing understanding that absolute rule was an illusion, that true strength came from cooperation, true intelligence from empathy, true power from the willingness to help others achieve their highest potential. Finally, slowly, the ancient emperor's massive form began to change, not physically but fundamentally. His consciousness expanded to encompass not just his own empire, but the well-being of all species within it. His understanding deepened to recognize that diversity strengthened rather than threatened civilization. His capacity for wisdom grew to match his capacity for strength. "Stand down," he ordered his fleet, his voice carrying across quantum channels with new harmonics of authority, not the authority of domination, but the authority of earned wisdom. "The old age is ending. We will learn what it means to be guardians instead of conquerors." Throughout the Annihilation Fleet, weapons powered down and shields lowered. Draconian crews felt the transformation spreading through their consciousness, unlocking genetic potentials that had been dormant since their species first learned to fear, rather than protect. Marcus smiled, feeling the wave of relief and hope spreading through the galactic quantum network. The critical moment had passed. Evolution had triumphed over stagnation, cooperation over conflict, wisdom over force. In the years that followed, the galaxy transformed beyond recognition. The Draconian Empire became the galactic cooperative, with every species contributing their unique strengths to the collective good. Former slave worlds became centers of learning and growth. Technologies developed through cooperation advanced far beyond what any single species could have achieved alone. Humans took their place as bridges between the physical and quantum realms, helping other species unlock their own transcendent potentials. The Draconians became the galaxy's protectors in the truest sense, their strength used to defend rather than conquer. Together with dozens of other awakening species, they began exploring not just new star systems but new dimensions of existence itself. Marcus Chen, who had once been a powerless child breaking rocks in darkness, became the first human to join the Primarch Collective, not through abandonment of his humanity, but through its ultimate fulfillment. He helped guide the galaxy's evolution while remaining connected to the species and world that had shaped him. The age of domination was over. The age of transcendence had begun. And throughout the cosmos, other galaxies watched and learned, preparing for their own moments of choice between evolution and entropy, growth and stagnation, the transcendence that came from embracing change or the transformation that came from resisting it. The universe itself was evolving, and humanity had become its catalyst for change.